every time you get money, you're investing in wigs, and you have not invested anything in your brain. You put an expensive wig on an empty head. What kind words can we use for you? Hello, Atiwe here. So today I brought you to our village public library. It is called the Library of the African Nile. It is Pakwach Public Library. Yes, we are in Pakwach. Come, it is free. It is always open every single day of the week from Monday to Monday. On working days, it's open from 8 to 5. Weekends till 8 to 5. Only Sunday where we start around 11. People perish because of ignorance. This is all resources for wisdom. I always tell people you don't have to experience everything to learn from it. Otherwise, you'll make a lot of mistakes. But you can always learn from other people's mistakes and improve your life. You don't have to go through everything. That is a foolish move. So here is years of wisdom, years of experiences, years shared. As you come in, there are indoor games table. This is chess. I don't know how to play chess, but in this section of chess, I think it was inspired by Queen of Katwe. Do you know about that story? If you don't know about it, please go on Netflix. There is an African story about Queen of Katwe. It hails from Uganda. That is a proud Ugandan. And guys, as you enter, because this is a community library, it is in West Nile. There is a bit of history that is here. That is Labongo and Gipil, the history. I don't know if you know about that story. The two brothers that fell apart to make two different tribes. That is the tribes, the separation point, how the two brothers separated to start two different tribes. Yeah, they are all sub-tribes of the Luo. So the Acholi and the Luos, they are the ones who divided. So in a way, Acholis and the Alurs are brothers because they are all Luos. Are we together? And we are in West Nile. It means western part of the Nile. So that is why most of the illustrations we have River Nile. For example, this one, River Nile, someone sailing, there is a hippo somewhere. And in the middle of the library, we have the map of River Nile, because that is the main physical feature that we have here. River Nile has its source in Uganda. If you didn't know, the longest river in the world has its source in Uganda. That is River Nile. It starts from Lake Victoria. It flows its way downwards. Most of you will say upwards because South Sudan is the north. Being the north doesn't mean necessarily it is up, but it flows downwards to Sudan because Sudan is on a lower altitude, through South Sudan to Sudan. In Sudan, Sudan's capital city here in Khartoum is where it meets the Blue Nile. It comes from Uganda as the White Nile, but when they meet in Khartoum, it meets the Blue Nile, which has its source at Lake Tana in Ethiopia. Blue Nile is believed to have contributed more waters to the Nile than the White Nile, though the White Nile is the longest part of the Nile. So from Uganda to the Mediterranean Sea, it takes 90 days for the waters to reach the Mediterranean Sea. That is 3 months. This is the map of the Nile in the middle here. So all children have to know that that water body, that river that is flowing through our village is our pride. Okay? That is it. But my favorite section of the library has the geography, African animals, biographies, biology. My favorite part of the library is the African collection. Here there are different African literatures, though my favorite is in the classical fiction, that is Things Fall Apart. But Africa story collection is my favorite part. And I have a challenge to read every book in this section. Every book here. Then there is a collection for Nile River collection. Most of you would wonder, how does Atiwe know so much about River Nile? All these books are fountains of wisdom. It's a public library. If you're in Pakwach, you need to do your research and all that. You can always come in, Then we have the reference section where we have the encyclopedias, the whatever, all other things that you will need. We have a computer resource part up there because it is a way of empowering everyone. What fascinated me mostly on my first visit to this library was the African heroes. As you sit down to read, an African child has to be reminded that Africans are brilliant people, and such people that fought so much for Africa's independence are highlighted here. And the African heroes, we have Mwalimu Julius Nyerere from Tanzania. We have Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana. He is the one that led Ghana to independence, and I have to remind you, Ghana was the very first country in Africa to have its own independence. We have Ellen Johnson from Liberia. She's a she, if that's right English. Sir Apollo Milton Obote. He's the one who led Uganda to independence. Obore. Meriton Obore. This is Wangari Maathai from Kenya. She's a very famous environmentalist, if I should say. Patrice Lumumba, all the way from the Congo. It was believed that Patrice Lumumba was brutally murdered by the Belgian colonialists, and only the Congolese family only received his jaws back. Then, my grandfather, if you don't know, I don't know how to convince you, Nelson Mandela from South Africa. I love this, that is at the front of the class. As kids are reading, you know you can. If Mandela did it, you can also did it. You can also did it. And then here in Pakwach, we are next to Machon Falls National Park. So there are other things to illustrate our grandfathers. Our grandfathers were literally poachers. So anyway.
By the way, adding on to that, when it comes to poaching, the government gazetted a place, the game park, for tourism and reserving the animals, and then they left another side of it for people to
for hunting.
Yeah. So that we can keep with our
traditions. Because here we're mainly fishers because of the Nile, then hunters and oil.
So if you see us eating something, don't think we went to that.
Come, I take you to an adult fiction. I grew up when we don't have TV at home, but we had a library. I was in Kumi. For most of you who don't know, I have my roots somewhere in Teso. So we had a library that we would go to, and we had fiction books. That is how I would narrate to people. They would ask us each time, okay, each family is going to narrate a movie, and me, all I could narrate were books because that's all I could read as movies. So there is a lot of just not seeing all these books. I'm so excited. It excites me. I hope my community makes very great use of this. So here there are fictions, adult fiction, juvenile fiction, classical fiction, women's interest, books about women are here. Women's bodies, women's wisdom, taking control of your health, everything, husbands and wives. There's a lot of information here, a lot of information. And I want to remind you, people perish because of ignorance. When did you last read? When did you last listen to an improving podcast? When did you last? But every time you get money, you're investing in wigs. And you have not invested anything in your brain. You put an expensive wig on an empty head. What kind words can we use for you? When did you last buy a book? Some of you buy books to show off. When did you last read the books you bought? So we have a section for children. We have to instill the art of reading at a very young age. All this is a section for children, and it's rich with books, by the way. This library is very rich and well furnished. I should say there are cushions for them when they are reading their books. Yep. That is all I could show you around the library. I hope you enjoyed it. This is where the reader, if it's story time, this is where the reader will see it. This is how we applaud you, we celebrate the brave people who have stood up to read. So, which other part of the library do you want to see? If you ever come to Pakwach, yes, we do have a public library. Most of you hail us, oh, Northerners, they are very wise people. We read. We read. Yes, we are born wise, but we read. Thank you.